I mean, would look. I'm not saying it was or is, but definitely.
Yeah, very live.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call our meeting to order and a very happy new year to everybody. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item is consent agenda. Recommended action is to approve the following items, which are included in the consent agenda. 4A minutes, 6A athletic mergers, 6B resolution for the disposal of personal property, and 6D special education. May I have a motion, please?
I move it. Second.
Any discussion? If not, please vote.
Oops.
I vote yes. I just logged myself out.
Okay.
Mistake.
7 yes. We're moving on to our first bit of the cause. Karen, is there anything? No. Nothing under that. Doesn't appear that there's anything information for the public. Then we will move into operations report and Dana.
Yes, thank you. You have a document that was provided. It's our bid opening document. So that's really what I wanted to focus on with this committee meeting. I know there's an agenda item later on, action items in terms of you guys deciding if we want to move forward or not with the auditorium project. John from Mosaic is here in case you have any additional questions from it. But basically what it comes down to is last week we had our bid opening, and basically the project was broken down to 3 contracts. We have a general contractor, an electrical, and then theatrical to make up the entire work. We got 3 bids, one from each of the respective areas. And you'll see the bid document that Mosaic put together breaks down the costs for each. For the general contractor, it was based about $234,000. For the electrical, $179,000. For the theatrical piece was just about $900,000, $899,900,000, for a total of $1.3900 is what it comes down to. So that's kind of where we are in this process. And then really what I wanted to bring it up is the fact that a year or so ago, when we brought this project to the board in terms of wanting to move forward and look at it, as well as with the fitness equipment, we were anticipating a cost of about $900,000, a little over $900,000. So you can clearly see that it has come in over that projection. It was not what we based it off of. We had a consultant group through Mosaic, ABL, come in. They reviewed everything. They put together some projected costs, and that's what it was built off of. Is that so? It is definitely almost $400,000 more than what we anticipated. At the time, if you look back at the resolution in terms of moving forward with it, the wording was it was an estimated cost of $1 million. That was not the ceiling, wasn't the limit, but it was estimated. So really wanted to put this in front of you guys before you vote on it as to do we move forward with this, given the fact that it's about $400,000 more than what we thought it was over a year ago.
Do you have provisions for that other $400,000 that you know where that's coming from?
Well, yeah, because the repair reserve we have that the public approved is up to $1 million in the reserve, but we can keep adding to that. So the intention was when we spent the first $1 million that we put in there through the unassigned fund balance, we could put money back into it, as long as we have it in the unassigned fund balance.
Let me ask a couple of questions. What was where did the estimate come from a year ago? Was that from our architects?
Yes, yep, so through Mosaic, they brought in, it was AVL, it's an audio visual group, this is what they do. They came in, they, did a walkthrough, looked at all of our stuff, and based off of, the market at that time is
Yeah.
how they put together the pricing.
I have a huge problem with this cost. I absolutely do. I've always said that anytime the board wants to spend money for the academic excellence of our children, I'm 100% behind it. I just see this as an awful lot of money. Is there any urgency? Are we losing grants if we don't act now or anything like that?
We're not losing grants, but no, not at all.
A construction window we're losing?
No, I mean, what we're losing is the ability to use the auditorium for musicals and such. Because the lighting in there is it's outdated, that we're to that point where if we want to do a production there that requires lights, they're renting lights
So
because
a year ago, I went to a production there. How did we do it a year ago?
they rented lights.
Okay, what was the cost of renting lights?
I honestly don't remember. I mean, it wasn't like $100,000 by any means.
This is difficult for me. It really is. I gotta tell you.
Dana, was there anything that gave you some indication that you thought $1 million would cover this and now we're like 40% higher?
45.
Is there anything, was there any additional, some preliminary estimates or anything that gave us some idea that we were coming in comfortably at $1 million, hoping for a little less? And
Yeah, based off of the consultant group, AVL, they put together the projection cost of $900 and some thousand. So that's why that's
Right, no,
Right.
no.
what we went off of. John,
I'd like to ask a question of John. I
Yeah.
mean, you answered one of them. You got one bid for each of the three things. I mean, that's problematic
Yes.
in and of itself. But, John, in this day and age, are these three bids, based on your experience, typical for that component of the work? Or are these one or more of these out of line?
Yeah, so a couple things. To answer your first question, yes, they are slightly higher. If you had a couple bids, would they be a little more competitive? Probably, but they're not out of the range of what they should be. I think, to be completely frank, I'm obviously coming new into working with you. And I've spent the past week and a half trying to get to the bottom of why this bid came in as it did. And from what I can tell is the theatrical system was, as Dana was talking about $900,000. What we didn't do a good job, our team was identifying the electrical and the general construction costs that get added to that 900,000 to get to the 1.3 or so dollars. And that's as far as I can tell, the major deviation. In speaking with our consultants, AVL, there has been a market upgrade in pricing changes over the past year, but that doesn't make up for quite that amount of money. But I think there was a 20-25% pricing upgrade since we originally shared the estimate.
That's useful.
I don't know,
So who prepares the contracts? If we decide to accept this, who do the contracts? An attorney for the town? I mean, for the village? Listen to me, the school, see my background, the village and town. So really, what?
Correct, yes.
I'd like to review the contracts. I'd like to review the bid package. I'd like to review the bids. As a lawyer, I've been doing that for a long time. That's what I would like to do before we act on it.
May I pose something to John just to kind of bring us all up to speed?
Yeah.
So, John, can you speak to the deficiencies in our present system, whereby we could gain a sense of the level of urgency we may have with the present the present system?
I think there were a lot of different components that were being replaced in the theatrical package. The two biggest was your lighting and your rigging, bringing your rigging up to modern standards. I don't know what your safety reports are with regard to the rigging at present. And then the lighting system. And one thing we did ask of our consultants, because that was the largest portion of the bid, when we did get a breakdown from the contractor, and it really needs to be done wholesale. There's not a way to really break that apart to reduce the cost. While some individual elements do exist, the projector or something, or curtains or elements like that, the rigging and the lighting were the two biggest ones, and it wasn't really possible to sort of value engineer those elements. Did that answer your question?
I think so, because what I was sort of driving at is,
Yeah.
can this be done incrementally? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, due to the level of outdatedness, it really
And that's one of the things when we were looking at, and Mosaic and I, we had talked about this because there are 3 different contracts, and initially it was like, okay, we pull out the theatrical, do the general and electrical, and I said, well, that defeats the purpose, because the whole idea is to replace the lights. In order for us to replace the lights, we need to have the electrical component. We also need to have the GC component as well, so that they kind of go hand in hand. You know, you can't pull out the biggest cost variation in theatrical and move forward with the other 2 components, because we're not getting what we were looking to get.
Let me ask this question. If we reject the bids and rebid, what's the timeline on that? And I'll ask John, what do you think? In your assessment, is there any chance that we'll get a better pricing?
The better pricing, and we did have this conversation with the theatrical contractor, or not that our consultants, is our understanding. AVL is one of the biggest theater designers in the state, and they do a majority of the public K-12 work. And their understanding is all of the contractors, of which there's not many, there's about 3 or so theater contractors in New York State that do this work. They are booked solid for this year. So there is an element not only of the escalation of pricing, but they're full. And so there is a potential, if we rebid the theater package in a different timeline, yes, the cost would go down. That was our consultant's opinion. So if we did this in the fall or next year, that would relieve some of the pricing from the theater package.
Estimates, is there any penalty if they go over by a certain
That's why I
amount?
want to see the contract.
This is just an estimate. I mean, so we went over $200,000.
change orders come in.
Well, within
Which
these-
always happens.
Within, and
Things are
correct me,
never
yeah,
less
correct
than the estimate.
me if I'm wrong, John, but within each one of these, there are allowances built into the pricing. So, like the theatrical has a $40,000 allowance built in, but that's part of that price. So basically, what they're saying is, here it is, and if it goes perfect, well, it's actually $40,000 less than what.
So
we
that's
bid
a
it.
maximum guaranteed
Right,
price.
so the
Yes.
allowance, they're gonna bid the
course they are.
maximum amount for the allowance.
Right, so because they have like their base bid, and then each one has
Yeah.
an allowance amount. I think theatrical was 40,000, and then the electrical and general, I think they were either 10,000 or
10
20,000.
or 20, yeah. And we make the contractors write it out specifically so that they acknowledge that it is that amount. And if they don't use it at the end of the contract, there's a deduct change order that comes back to the district.
So John, you feel, when you just stated that you felt the theatrical systems organization, because they're so almost like double booked right now, this is why they're able to present this price. But if we deferred until the fall or whatever, or maybe there's not as much work on their docket, that we might get a better price?
Yes. And I can get back to you on our consultant's opinion of how much that may change if it's 10% or 20%, whatever the number might be.
How much is this a breakdown between labor and material?
We didn't get a true schedule of values, but it's typical general construction is about 50-50. But theater being a little more tech heavy and equipment heavy, it probably skews to 60 to 70% for equipment would be my guess.
Yeah, and presumably since all these are out of town, Plattsburgh, Queensburg, they're gonna have to bring their crews in. Sure.
Yep.
Daily basis, or they're gonna have to put them up someplace, room and board is in there, for some period of time till the project's done. And I'd like to know about how much that's gonna cost. I mean, if these are the only people around, you're kind of between the rock and the hard place.
Well, how much of a detriment is this to our students, to our programming right now? If we delay this until the fall, is this preventing our programming from moving forward? Are they in any kind of, code violation with our building and grounds, that kind of thing? So how much of that comes into play here with our students, first
So,
and foremost?
Dana,
right?
is it fair to say that we're in a stable situation? But once we touch it, we've got to.
Correct.
We've got to completely overhaul it.
Right, I mean, at this point, the music department, the theatrical departments, they don't feel comfortable enough using our present lighting system. But to answer your question, Colleen, is it affecting programming? No, the musical is set to be at the LPCA. They rented lights for the fall play. So they've made adjustments. They have not, as a result of our lights, they're not offering, they're still offering what they typically offer. They're just making changes to where it's either located or, bringing in equipment.
And the cost of running lights, if that's the only, if there's a potential $250,000 savings.
$130,000, 10%. That's like real money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Devil's advocate, we kick the can down the road another 6 months to a year. And this comes back at $1.5 million or $1.6 million because everything's going through the roof.
And
At what point are we going to bite the bullet and just do it, I guess is my question.
That's a good question.
Don't get me wrong, $1.3 million is a lot of money.
No, it is.
And we have a duty to service the taxpayers, but we also have a duty to make sure that the drama kids and the band kids and the theater kids have the same opportunities and same equipment that every other kid that plays a sport or, on the debate club or whatever we do, and I just want to see them have the best. And if this is where the number is right now, I would hate to see in 6 months if it comes back at 1.5 or 1.6.
So would I.
Oh, I know. I'm just playing devil's advocate on it. That's all. I'm just trying to figure out happy medium here,
Yeah, but I don't think the prices are going to increase that much in the next year. I mean, if you talk construction.
25% in 1 year?
No, but it's, a lot of the construction prices have already stabilized post-COVID, and I mean, it would be unlikely for it to take another.
I think, John, didn't you say you could speak with a consultant and come back with an opinion on that?
Yeah, we can get you some better information. I don't have it with me right now.
Fine.
Do we have the liberty to hit pause, or do we need to outright reject these? Because I know there's been some discussions of tariffs.
The contractors will hold their pricing for at least 45 days. So you do not have to make a decision right now. If you want to have further have us and your representatives have further conversations with them, we can do that. I will say that these all are contractors that we trust and have worked with many times, or the district has. So these, if you were going to pick contractors to do this project, this is a good group of bids to get.
I don't think it can hurt. If we got 45 days.
We can hurt. Yeah, I'd like to see us do that.
What is the date? I just closed out.
So it's So
The 16th.
This expires when?
End of February.
Effectively end of February.
Okay, so that's like 6 weeks,
2 meetings to act on it if need be.
February short.
I'd just like more information from John, speak with the consultant. Get more information. Another thing.
One more question. Tim, you made a point that we're not in compliance with current code. Could you elaborate on what exactly that means? Is it some trivial?
I couldn't to the degree that I'm sure.
I know that when ABL came and they did the review of everything, our rigging, so the rigging on the stage was out of compliance. But as long as you don't touch it, you're fine, because what we have up there, I guess at that time, according to them, there was no code. So, you know, that's how old, I mean, it's like 20+ years old. So in that regard, we're not violating anything, because when they was put in, it was acceptable, and as long as we're not touching it, then it's, you know, and it's not deemed a safety
I'm
hazard.
trying to get, I mean, if you look at back then versus now, 25 years or whatever it is this some egregious accident waiting to happen? Or is this some little technicality that we need to do?
I would think that, and this is, I'm postulating here, but that when this system was assessed, that if they indicated that it was hazardous, that they
Hazardous.
that they would have
Yeah.
cease and desist and notify the district immediately. I mean, is that a fair supposition on my part, John, that if this presented such a current hazard that it deemed the auditorium unsafe, that we would have been notified by ABL during their assessment?
I believe so. I'm gonna have to go back through the report. You as a district, also get the rigging independently inspected. So I think you would have known that as well, apart from our project.
Things we need to figure out then, as a district, is what's the benefits of a potential delay financially, and what are the safety concerns that need to be borne out before we make a values determination?
Yeah, well, then we're going to figure out how to pay for it.
When in doubt, do
Yes,
nothing.
and then there's the larger.
I said, when in doubt, do nothing for the moment.
To float a bond.
There appears to be no downside to waiting.
What, at least 45 days.
Yeah, I don't mean a long time, but it.
A
Get
month,
more information
yeah.
from John.
Yeah. I think that's worthwhile doing.
Yeah, and if you, I pulled up the report that we got from ABL, and they used the wording, you know, that their stage rigging, should be replaced, and say it had to be replaced at that time, just that it should be replaced. Curtains as well, they're 20 years old. Lighting, they would need a new console and upgrades to the LED. I mean, that's the whole idea. The new lighting is all
Of course,
LED and all that. But right, did not use wording in the report that it had to be done at that moment in time.
Let me ask you, Dan, what is the general construction that's required that Marine will be doing?
Ceiling and stuff.
Well, and John, you might have to chime in. I know they're doing a little work underneath the stage, so there's some reinforcement of the stage. They're gonna have to get in underneath the staging in that where the costume room is, and do some reinforcing there. And then the electrical is because we're not using the same spots where the electric lights are on the walls, so they're gonna be removing them. The current side where the lights are on the sides are near the balcony, the top of the front of the balcony, and they're being relocated. So there, I mean, obviously all new electrical there, as well as new rigging on the sides for the lights as well.
Okay.
I believe there's some structural and reinforcement for the new rigging too.
Okay, yeah.
And does rigging play a role in many productions?
Well, it's what the lights hang on the stage. That's what the rigging is for. So all of the stage lighting are on,
Like that metal bar.
Yeah, the metal bars,
Oh, I
right.
got it.
Yes, yep. Initially, we had looked at, in the initial report, we had talked about a motorized truss that would come down from the ceiling, kind of overhanging where the pit is, and get rid of the lights on the sides, because that's kind of where auditorium and theatricals are going. but our roof structure is at its capacity. We cannot add any additional work onto the ceiling. That's why we had to go back to where they originally are. So they're just gonna be placed on a different location, but mounted to the walls as opposed to coming down from the ceiling. Other questions for John or for myself in terms of this? That's the operations report.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you,
Thanks,
John.
John.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Dana, you are up again with the budget performance report, please.
Good. Okay, so we got the budget performance reports. This is as of January 17th. If you look at it, there are no real major differences. We're trending about 4.5% higher than this time last year. Salaries at this point, we're up 9%. Benefits are down 2%. Materials and supplies are down 33%. Equipment, that's up 67%. But again, that's, if you look at it, it's really, a lot of this is all about timing. I waited until Friday to do this report. If I would have done this report a day before, our increase would have been like 2%. We had a payroll on that Friday. I purposely waited because I knew that it was going to, change. So a lot of this is really about timing, but it is a true look as of January 17th, where we are today versus where we were January 17th of last year. We're trending, if you look at it again, 4.5% higher. Our budget for increase for this current year was just about 3%. So we're trending a little higher than what we budgeted, but I'm not seeing anything unusual here because a lot of it's timing. Same as our revenue at the bottom. Charges for services, that's kind of like rental and stuff like that. It says down, 38%. That's really, it's $9,000. That's just in terms of, when money comes in, we have a little less money that we brought in this year so far from tuition payments than we did last year. Nothing unusual by any means. Our budget isn't built on these numbers. They're built off the property tax, the state and federal aid, as well as the use of money, which is our interest. So you can see there is, we're trending pretty closely, about $13,000 less than where we were last year. Again, that's nominal. Rates have come down a little bit in the last couple of months. I do know that since our reserve account, restricted reserve account that's sitting in 9 class, that's generated already over $30,000 being in there. So this is, we're still trending well where we're budgeted for that amount. We're going to hit that before the end of the year. All said and done, we're sitting at 3% higher than we were last year for revenue. Again, nothing that is a worrying trend. I do want to ask with this are you fine with this report in terms of how it looks? Do you want something else? I mean, I can do anything. I can look at year to date where I basically just look at this year and show what was budgeted versus where we are at this point. Or I can continue doing that comparison of where we are currently to where we were last year.
I think it's helpful. I think the visual is great.
Yeah, I like this format.
Easier to read though. Way easier to read.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And I stopped using that only because it was a cost savings thing in terms of using analytics. I loved it. It was a lot to do, a lot that they offered, but I wasn't using all the bells and whistles towards the amount of money. So this is an Excel spreadsheet that I put together. Saved a little money in terms of not using analytics. Questions on the budget performance?
Not at all. Excellent.
And Dana, your last report?
Treasury report, yes. Again, nothing unusual here in terms of it. We're at that time now, as I said last month, where our money in is far less than our money out, because all our money comes in by November. Well, most of all our money comes in by November. Over 80% is property tax. So that's why you see that reverse, where we're not bringing in as much cash receipts as we are dispersing. But you can see on the other side, we're still sitting at nearly over $18 million sitting in various accounts. 14 of which is our nine-class account. That's where we're getting the best bang for our buck. It's still sitting at about 4.5% is what we're getting for rate.
Yeah,
So it's gone down from a couple months ago, but we knew that was going to happen when the feds had lowered the key rates the last couple times. So we're still sitting at about 4.5%. We're getting keeping the money in nine-class. Second month in a row where our outstanding checks are quite small in comparison. $33,000. I think last month it was even less than that. So which is good. We don't have a lot of outstanding checks out there. People are depositing it when they get it. But we are still looking pretty healthy in terms of our money in our accounts. Questions on the treasury report?
Thank you. Tim, the superintendent report, please.
Sure. So we're in the second of the 2-week future planning process. For those of you who have been on the board for a number of years, you may be familiar with that process. And those of you who are new, just a brief summation of the intent. So we sit down, the building principals, Sarah Allen and I, we sit down with each department and grade level team in the district over the span of 4 or 5 days. And we hear from the teams about how they perceive that they're doing with regards to instructing the students in the different content areas. And then we have a series of questions that we ask them across the board each year. We measure and we take from their responses what they need in terms of potential schedule changes, implementing different classes, different offerings for kids. We also have the guidance counselor at the middle high school. Connie Hamaker sits in the meetings as well. And so when we're starting early phase, January, February, to build next year's course requests for students, a lot of this flows from the dialogue that we have with them. And we also get some insight into what professional development teams need. All of that is really good. And I'm excited because tomorrow we'll have the elementary future planning meetings, and the elementary school has taken on the science of reading program this year, Amplify across the board. And the way I've sort of described it at the middle high school, the situation that they find themselves in compared to the elementary school is that at the middle high school, content level and grade level teams have, over the course of time, built their curriculum, leveraging different resources from New York State, but they built that over time into, the departments meet and they discuss what needs to be added and amended. At the elementary school, they've adopted an entire curriculum, and when you adopt something with the just mass that's in there, you need to pare it down, but you need to pare it down in a way that's like thoughtful and collaborative. And so I'm excited for those meetings because I expect to hear from the teams, this is working really well, this part of the program is not, and then we can cross-reference with the folks at Amplify and with our team to say, well, these are how we want to amend those for next year and things like that. So it's kind of like, would you rather build something from the ground up, or would you rather have a complete foundation that you're going to pare down based on what works? Just different aspects that run into the district. But I think the conversations are super valuable, so I'm pleased to be having them. Moving on from future planning, I am very pleased to say have been awarded a grant through the Adirondack Foundation. So this is the William J. and Dorothy K. O'Neill Foundation grant. And the grant is designed in 2 parts. The first is to provide funding to support our community schools mission. So this is an annualized grant that will go towards supporting community schools, which we're really excited about. And the second part of the grant is kind of, I say, twofold. One is that it is designed to provide the district with opportunities to sharpen the saw, so to speak, and go to different professional development. But also, there are 2 other districts within the region that are community schools who are also part of this grant consortium, Saranac Lake and their community schools model, and Brush and Moira School. And the notion is that we are the tip of the spear for the community schools model in the Adirondacks. The Adirondack Foundation is really predominant supporter of the model. And so we will be in a position to help impart some of the wisdom that we've learned through it to schools that could adopt the program themselves. So very pleased with that and grateful to the O'Neill Foundation for their support. I know there was an article recently about just the inroads that are being made with the childcare partnership. But I did just want to acknowledge and thank the town of North Elba for their financial commitment of the early child care program starting in September at St. Agnes. That $50,000 will go a long way towards addressing a pretty critical need for our community. And I know that from the town side, they have completed their comprehensive plan. And in the comp plan, which really has been overseen by Dean Dietrich over the last several years, the comp plan talks at length about some of the social fabric limitations in our community that we all know are stressors. And when you look at some of them, it's childcare access, it's housing affordability and opportunities for families, it's food insecurity. And then I think about the mission of our district over the past several years, like we've just addressed all those things simultaneously. So I feel very grateful that our community is cohesive in addressing core components that we know are hitting families on the daily. So it's beneficial, and I can tell you that there are a number of staff members breathing a very big sigh of relief, knowing that there will be a room with 8 infants being cared for at St. Agnes next year and 14 toddlers. So pleased to see that move forward. Tomorrow, we will be having our grades 3 through 5 concert at the Middle High School Auditorium. So this will take place at 6 p.m. The students came and had a draft rehearsal today. They were on their best behavior, so I applaud the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students for that. And I'm particularly excited to see what the students bring to the table. We have a brand new elementary music teacher. And Mr. Blevins is just a wonderful presence. The kids love him. I hear about it all the time from the students down there, and I'm really excited to see just the enthusiasm that he brings to the table, how that's going to translate to the stage tomorrow. So looking forward to that. This is another, I think, positive development for our district. So, you know, we're almost at the halfway point, really, of our strategic plan, our 5-year plan. And a lot of the things that are in our plan are predicated on our ability to act based on our understanding of where students are in the learning process. And the way in which we have planned to act is really threefold. The first is that we on a regular basis take the pulse of where our students are in their instruction with math and ELA. And we do that by having a couple of NWEA tests that we have in the fall, the winter, and in the spring. And from that information, we are able to be responsive by putting students in targeted groups so that different skill levels can be addressed and you can be responsive. Teachers are always going to have to differentiate in the classroom. You're always going to have students of varying proficiency levels and skills that they need reinforced. I remember being in class as an educator and just a student gets the flu and is out for 4 days, and like, you got to catch that kid up with everyone else. And so you amplify that over the course of a student's career, you're going to see a need for differentiation. But if we can be more targeted with how we create our RTI groups and our enrichment groups, then we're going to allow all of our students to feel more challenged. So we're at a point now where we've compiled enough data points where it's actually data. It's not just information, right? So you have to provide these tests enough times where you can build some stock into the value of the information. So that's a very positive thing. Another benefit of these exams is that they provide our teachers with an overview of, like, they can look at a cohort and say, oh, well, 70% of the students didn't get this concept. So that's beneficial too. And that's a growing edge for us in now having the data, building systems where we can have time and kind of the understanding with teachers where they can actually review that information. But the last one is really what I wanted to indicate is that I think our parents and students have been incredibly patient and trusting in this process. No one likes the notion of over-testing students, and particularly testing students where there is not sufficient value from the information. And our kids have been great the last year and a half in allowing us to compile this information where now it's usable. And so with our NWEA data point at the start of February, we're going to have our first mailer home to parents where they're going to see information about their students' learning. And, prior to that, there'll be some information in the newsletters, which kind of just gives parents a heads up about what's coming, what the value of that information is. So I think it's going to, it speaks a little bit to my message to the staff at the start of the year. It's like being a parent is hard. And the Surgeon General just came out at the start of the year and said, hey, you didn't already know, parenting is a really tough gig. And parents want to feel successful in supporting their kids. So let's give them information that is another tool in the toolbox. So I'm excited to see us get to this point. And I'm grateful for the staff and parents and students for exercising patience as we've worked. And all of that work really calls for just an opportunity to blow off some steam. And so on that note, what could be more prudent than our annual celebration of Winter Carnival? So this year's Winter Carnival is all based around the country carnival. If you have seen the newsletters, the cowboy hat on the snowman image warms my heart. And so I'm very excited to see what transpires on February 6th and 7th. We will don our Nordic sweaters and cowboy hats simultaneously. So I'm most excited for that. And then just on a final note, looking ahead, I certainly have goals this year as superintendent. I know the board has goals as well. And there's some reports that just coming down the pike, I think will be beneficial in the service of those. So at our February 4th meeting, Mr. Clark is going to come in and give an overview of community schools. So I'm excited for that. I had an opportunity to talk at the start of the year with the board about how civics is embedded into our curriculum. And so the second phase of that is how enrichment opportunities and field trips and guest speakers, how all of those things also feed a different understanding of civics for our students. So that's what that presentation will be about. And then by March 11th, Dana and I will have received an overview of the security report for the district done by Alteris, and we'll be able to review that with the board and give their recommendations on how we can continue to promote a safe and secure school. So all told, good directions and lots to look forward to.
That's great.
That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Let's see, information for the board. There are two things under public content, the save the date flyer for the legislative breakfast that's there, and also our extracurricular activity report for you to look at. And then there's a few items under executive content for all of you to look over at your leisure. Next, moving on to the Alumni Association. We do have information under executive content.
Yeah, and actually, I'll speak to this a little bit if that's all right. So, board goal number 3 about community engagement. We added an additional goal this year that we want to have like a really vigorous and ongoing relationship with our Alumni Association. We're fortunate to have, community members repping the blue and gold and wanting to see that continue. So on December 19th, I had a great meeting with representatives of the association. Dan Mayberry, who's co-president, came, and Mandy Myhill also came, both as a role as an educator in the district, but also a member of the alumni leadership team. And we talked a lot about their desire to have a deeper connection with our students, and our desire to make sure that our students feel that they're a part of this community the second they arrive. And so we had a pretty lengthy discussion that I just wanted to share some of the benefits of them. In speaking with the association, they had their meeting last night, and what we discussed, they thought was all favorable. So I'm really pleased with it. So some of the things that we talked about is when we do our open houses, we haven't had the association present for to kind of showcase what they're all about and the values that they have. So they're excited to be a part of our open houses from now on, which is great. We talked a lot about Winter Carnival, and this is my 4th year in the district, but I think my newbie colors are showing a little bit. I didn't fully appreciate that we are actually the longest Winter Carnival in the United States of America. So, you know, that's quite a badge that we need to represent. So some of the things that have been ongoing traditions for the Winter Carnival, we had a great time. Mandy actually provided a follow-up of all the things that make Winter Carnival special. And I shared that with our Winter Carnival coordinator, Connie Haymaker, and Miss Lindsay. And we've already been able to embed a number of these things that are going to be pretty, you know, in honor and service of what Winter Carnival has traditionally been. So some of the highlights include snow sculptures are back. The carnival itself is earlier as opposed to when it was in late March and snow was relatively scarce in these parts. We talked about adding some information for our students so they can appreciate the history and tradition of Carnival. And so Bob Lepek is working with us to have a video on the origins and importance of Winter Carnival for the students. And then we talked about some of the things that are traditions that have sort of fallen by the wayside. And we wanted to verify whether or not those things should change, they should come back, or they should stay the same. So like of the ones that are, I would say, the most desired on the part of the association, they're really hoping to see the snowball hop come back. We talked at length about how about 7 years ago it sort of fell asunder. And what some of the issues were that it was really pegged as a freshman class fundraiser, and it became a loss leader for them, and so it wasn't a strong source of financial revenue. And then we had some more broad discussions just about like to what extent are students, you know, interested in a dance and things like that. And we couldn't speak to it fully, but I did open it up to the association and say, if this is something that the association wants to exhume, then we're open to that. And so they said, well, maybe next year we can plan something. So I think that's good progress, and they appreciated the fact that you know, the tradition is sort of atrophied for reasons not entirely known to us. So those are some of the good things that we talked about with regards to Winter Carnival. Keith Clark also attended the meeting with me, and we're going to have some career days at the elementary school where alumni members will come in and work with our students, presenting different careers. We're going to work on an alumni display area in the foyer. And we started sharing the alumni spotlights that are on social media. By we, I mean the royal we, a Karen, so thank you, Karen. And then the other piece that we talked about at length was graduation, all right? And so we struck a balance as a group, I think. I've made very clear that as a district, we want to honor tradition, we want to honor longevity in the community. Graduation is a cumulative event where we're celebrating the collective efforts of all of our students. And the association for years had an opportunity to honor 4th and 5th generation family students graduating from Lake Placid. And in the last couple of years, that tradition stopped, in part because students in the 3rd and 2nd and 1st generation weren't being honored simultaneously. And in just talking with the association, you know, we had a good dialogue that we want to be as enthusiastic about students who are the newest members of the Alumni Association as we are about students who have been here in, you know, perpetuity. So based on that, we thought that we would enable all the students to be recognized for their respective classes upon graduation. And it was a good way to promote inclusion, but also to honor families who have you know, been longstanding members of this community for a long time. So they warmed to that idea, and I thought it was a good middle ground for our district. And other than that, we're going to continue to have ongoing discussions, but ultimately I'm grateful to have the alumni that we do. They support the entire workings of our community, so I just feel grateful to be able to work with them. So it was a good dialogue.
That's great. No, I appreciate all of the inroads that you've made with the Alumni Association, and, you know, for the families, the longstanding families out there that might be in that 4th, 5th generation category, if anything, it's going to be more impactful, I think, when you're calling up first year, second, third, and then
Yeah.
people's mouths are dropping off, like, wow, fourth, fifth generation, these people have been here since the late 1800s and families that have supported. So I think it's a nice thing to acknowledge all of them, and what a great way to figure out how to do it, so bravo.
Thanks.
Sorry, policy first reads,
Yes.
do you have any input on that? It doesn't.
I do, yes. I don't have any backup there because there are two policies that are in the queue. One of them is ready for, yes, one of them is ready for discussion this evening, and then the other one we're delaying. So the one that is ready this evening is just about free and reduced meal prices. And the changes are entirely logistical and nominal. So essentially, we need to indicate the manner in which we will publicize our summer meal program. And so the way we do that is through our website and also in our district newsletters. So we added those provisions into the policy. And then other language that we added into the policy has to do with the community eligibility provision. And now the community eligibility provision, whereby the percent of students in a district that are at or below the poverty line is 25%, then the district is eligible to have free meals through the federal community eligibility program. So that figure dropped, much to our pleasure. Was it 1 year ago, Dana?
Yeah, we
The
started
eligibility-
this back a year ago in November is when we started. It's a 4-year, we're in it for 4 years.
So that's been great to have all meals covered for students, regardless of station. And of course, as you all likely recall, the board supported free meals for students even when it came from the general fund. It was, a cornerstone of our district. But to have that offset by federal funding has been tremendous. So the policy just reflects that the community eligibility provision is 25%.
And that doesn't mean that
It's not a wash.
it's not a wash. The district is still covering the difference as you look into the policy. Basically, whatever isn't covered has to come from non-federal funds, which, we have been doing for the last few
General
years.
funds,
And it's just not, we don't have to pay as, we don't have to cover as much.
And I think Hochul, did she have something today in her plans in the new budget? Was there some, I
She
always usually look
indicated
at
her
it.
desire to have universal free meals for all,
Yeah.
which I think was regardless of community eligibility. So if people don't hit that 25%
Right.
threshold. For us, it's been beneficial in the fact that we've also prioritized local, scratch-made, healthy to the highest degree possible. And so having a substantial portion of the costs covered allows us to invest more in the quality of the food.
Yeah.
So it's been good.
That's great.
It is good, that's great.
So those are the policy modifications to this, just where it's publicized and recognizing the 25% of community eligibility provision. The other policy which we've delayed has to do with graduation ceremonies. And most of the language I'll go over at our next meeting, but really just it pertains to the fact that last year there was a change from New York State that said that students have the right to a free and public education until age 22, as opposed to age 21. And so for students who are identified in special education with disabilities. And so a policy needs to be amended to reflect that age difference. And then there's some language in there just about how we create our regulations to ensure that graduation is done well, consistently, et cetera. So there'll be more information on that at our next meeting. But that's the only policy up on the docket.
Right, thank you. Minutes are under consent. Moving on to the personnel consent agenda, recommended action. Approve the following items which are included in the personnel consent agenda. 6D, CSEA appointment. 6E, winter coach resignation. 6F, winter coach appointment. May I have a motion, please?
I'll motion it.
Colleen and Brian.
John, you have a question?
Discussion?
Yeah, I think that the reading of that should be 5D,
Oh, yeah, sure.
5E.
Correct.
No big deal.
Yeah, no. discussion with this? Please vote. Tim, did I see?
We pulled G. So G is a separate unit, so you won't need to.
Okay.
Because that's where the added volunteers.
Seven yes.
And just a quick word on what was in that consent package. So congratulations to Jen Ivyme, the newest member of our purchasing team, who will transition with Tracy Ridnor, with Tracy's impending retirement in April. And also thanks to Max Stratford for his service to the district as a coach. We wish him well in his business and family endeavors. And we thank Sheldon Cassidy for stepping into the role of assistant coach of SLP.
So there were 3 items that were not in consent. First is the teaching staff retirement. Recommended action upon recommendation of the superintendent, accept the retirement of Jody McKinnon for language teacher at the middle and high school, effective June 30th, 2025. May I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Was that mine?
Any discussion, any other than thanking her for her amazing service?
22 years,
What a great boss.
Madam Joe,
Yeah.
fantastic,
Yeah.
He was amazing.
wonderful teacher in person.
Yeah.
And as we learned at our board retreat, we actually can't deny the retirement
Yeah.
request.
Yeah.
Cross your mind.
I always just think about these
She'll be
great
greatly,
teachers
greatly
that
missed.
retire,
Absolutely.
for sure. Please vote.
Seven yes.
The next, teaching staff retirement, recommended action. Upon recommendation of the superintendent, accept the retirement of Laura Clark, second grade teacher at the elementary school, effective June 30th, 2025. May I have a motion, please?
I'll second.
Discussion, another great teacher we're losing?
Yeah.
It hurts. 25 years of service. I don't know how many puzzles made in second and third grade classrooms, but quite a few. But this one hurts too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mrs. Clark is going to be missed in a big way.
And congrats to both of them and best of luck in their next ventures. Please vote.
Seven yes.
The last one is appointment of additional winter volunteer coaches for the 24-25 season. Recommended action upon the recommendation of the superintendent, approve the additional volunteers for the 24-25 season. Kelly Locke and Matt Bartholomew for boys hockey and Alex Mayan for alpine skiing. Can you have a motion, please?
Sorry.
Was that John second?
Yes.
Discussion?
I have a question about Kelly's application. Is this for hockey or is this for golf?
This is for hockey, but does it say, oh, it does say golf.
It's, so this was an old one that I pulled out.
Okay.
See where it's got the old date on it.
Yes. Okay.
You did golf, or
Yes.
for the 6th graders
Right.
here 2 years ago.
Good catch though, Doug. Yes.
Do I have to see?
Yes.
You have to vote. Please vote.
6 yes, 1 abstention.
Awesome. Thanks to Kelly and Matt and Alex for volunteering your time and knowledge to assist our athletes. We appreciate it.
Moving on to other action items. Item A, B, and D are under consent. Item C, proposed contract award and resolution. Recommended action, approve the motion as stated below. And I believe
Is the right motion to table it?
Postpone.
Postpone.
motion to, oh,
I make that motion.
Also,
discussion would be at some meeting prior to the end of February when the 45 days. Okay,
Either February 4th or February 18th.
okay.
Okay.
So I said motion to postpone the action. The Motion to postpone the action.
Should we say no later than February 18th?
I put before the end of February 2025.
And then my motion accordingly.
Do we have a process in place as to what's gonna happen between now and then that will make us more informed?
Well,
I think we'll bring John back.
Well, yeah, I'll reach out to John after this meeting and ask for the information that you requested in terms of, what they could possibly see as a reduction if it's, put out the bid at a different time. 'Cause I think that's what he alluded to, that ABL indicated that yes, if we did something like in the fall for bidding, we could see potentially a 10 or 20%, reduction. So I think that's the information that I think we asked.
Try to gather.
And
And I think,
Ron, you're gonna be looking at the contract.
I'd like to see the contract.
yeah, I'd like to get the
Contract,
information as soon as
that was the
possible. so
detail
we're
for
running
this
up
contract.
against
Yeah.
the deadline.
Yes.
Back to my question, who does the contract?
We use Mosaic, like they put out the bid and all that, and then, so
Okay.
it comes, yes.
I like to see draft proposed contract.
And then bidding is not open.
I mean, I think if this board can decide by that date to
Reject.
reject all bids and start over.
Yes.
Right, and I think at some point, yes, the board has to make that
Of
decision,
course.
yes.
Oh, I agree.
Right.
Yes. But I would like to-
And that closes off the 45-day agreement.
Yeah, those prices aren't locked in anymore and
Yeah,
it's.
so we're not gonna have any bidding and at the same time keeping those bids alive.
No.
Yeah, we need to make, an informed decision before that
And
date.
I'm sure the same people are gonna bid or not again.
And maybe more. I mean, that's, we don't know.
Well, in any event, we will table this to
We'll talk about
either the next two meetings.
Right, so
and,
we need a motion and a second, and then you need to vote on table.
Okay, so a motion again.
So the
we make a
motion is motion to postpone the action on this item before the end of
No
February.
later than,
No later than
No later
February.
than
right.
So,
February 2025.
yes, so based on what Karen just said, can we have a new motion?
Who's
I move
first?
that-
That's the motion.
That's my motion. I just
Okay,
articulated it.
okay.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Ron and
I'll second.
Doug
Doug's in.
already had discussion. Please vote. Okay, do you have that, Karen?
Just reading that, 7 yes. The motion is to postpone this to the end, no later than the end of February.
Next item is linking goals with agenda items. Anyone have some items they'd like to add?
I think the whole discussion about the auditoriums,
Yeah.
students first and foremost.
Yeah.
Technology, finance.
Technology, finance, pretty much hit all
Hit all of
the
them.
buttons.
We've got the
Yeah.
alumni association, community
Yeah.
outreach. So we hit all of them
Definitely be on
tonight, I
there.
think.
We're at the table.
We hit all six, Karen. We have a second good of the cause. Anything, Karen?
No.
Everyone's just trying to keep warm and not interested. Let's see, moving into the adjournment phase, the next meeting date and location would be February 4th. Goodness, we have a budget work session at 4:30. My gosh.
Yep.
Wow. February 4th, budget work session.
Already, my
4:30.
goodness.
I know. It's
Just
like,
go to the
wow, that's
left,
just like we did this.
February 4th, anyone have any old agenda topics that we'd like to add? Any new agenda topics coming up? All right, then, we anticipate an executive session. I would like to have a recommended action, a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing negotiations and personnel at 6:05 PM. Motion,
I move it.
Who's the second, John?
Discussion, so can we have a vote, please?
All right,
So everyone here, just vote manually.
Okay.
Everyone, aye. Aye.
aye.
Dana,
Thanks so
can I get
much,
a copy
Colleen.
of the Bid package and a copy of the bids.
I would have to get that, yes, because.
I'd like to review them.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. Sometimes the bid